Hey folks, just a short little film tonight. The other day I posted about finding the blacksmith out in the woods. Some of you people call me a cheapskate for not buying a hammer from the man. Well, today back here on the back of the trailer there's a 50-pound power hammer that I bought from the man. So I ain't no cheapskate. I've got a little bit about the history of him and how he got started. It's really interesting. So watch it all the way through the end. His story is kind of unique, I think. As I was leaving, he walked up to me and he presented me with this nice little straight peen hammer that he made. It's got a hickory handle on it, and it's all nice and shiny, and he gave it to me. He said it's a second. He don't want to sell it because it's got a few little imperfections. He said the peen is not exactly parallel to the hammer, so he's not going to sell it, so he gave it to me. And I said, well, looks pretty good to me. I'm kind of cross-eyed. Ever since that horse kicked me, I just kind of went a little cross, but it's okay. I can use this. Thank you, Mark. Anyway, here's his story. Oh, I guess I better show you a little bit about the power hammer I bought. It's a Little Giant 50-pounder. Getting kind of dark here, I'm sorry. Let me see if we can get out of the way of that trailer. It's mostly all there. It's got a motor mount down here. I'm thinking about putting one on the shelf up here so I can run shorter belts and put a guard on it. It looks like its number is K716232 something. I'll get a better picture of that so I can look it up. Little Giants have a website, and you can still buy some parts. So this one's not going to take too much to put back in operations. The Babbitt bearings up there on the top shaft. I've got all the keys and a couple of sets of tools for it, and we can always make some more. This is going to be nice. One of the things I noticed about it is it doesn't have any bolt holes. It's got one hole, two holes in the casting, and that's about it. Thought you had to bolt these things down really big time. I don't know if this will work. Sun's, but you can't guess where I am today. I'm back out in the woods. And in the woods there lives a young man, a blacksmith by trade. How you doing?
Doing good.
I came back over here today to buy something from him. For all you guys that were calling me a cheapskate for not buying a hammer from him, I did buy a hammer from him. A big one. So there. One of the things people have been asking me is, why at 11 years old did you start this, and who helped you? And did you just pick up a hammer and say I'm a blacksmith, or what did you do?
Right. Well, so I started, like you said, when I was 11. During that time I was already interested in history and going to different festivals and historic events. You'd see the blacksmith there, so I think that had a contributing factor. But also around this time I was, during the summer, going to summer camps for wilderness survival and outdoor classes. And
why did you feel you needed to have wilderness survival in College Station, Texas?
well, I don't think especially at that time, I wasn't thinking about what I needed, but I thought it was fun. So,
Okay.
So I would do that.
There's not any bears or anything back here I need to be worried about, is there?
No, not that I've seen.
Okay.
My mom says there's monkeys, but I've never seen any. But the instructor who was teaching these classes had he carried a large fixed blade knife, and at the time I also wanted one. But looking around, they were all way more expensive than what I wanted to pay. So I figured I'd just make one. And so I started then with knife making. First grinding knives, not forging them.
Whoa, wait a minute. You said you're going to make one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that requires an anvil and hammers and a forge, and not many 11-year-olds have that.
Right.
Did your dad have one?
No.
What? Your uncle, grandfather?
My dad was actually out of town at the time, and while he was gone, we just replaced a stainless steel sink in a cabin on our property. And so I took that stainless steel sink and I lined it with concrete to help insulate it so it wouldn't melt through. And that was my forge that I then, up underneath, stuck a hairdryer for the air. And I burnt charcoal at first to heat up the metal. My anvil was a sledgehammer head, just nailed down to a stump pretty much. And all the other littler tools were pretty much kind of just
whatever
like
you
that,
could
thrown
round
together.
up 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Did you use your mother's knives and stuff to start?
No,
Oh,
my first project, I forged a couple knives out of railroad spikes, which seems to be a pretty common thing that people start with.
okay.
So then as far as the learning, there's a lot of information on YouTube, but that's not the same as actually learning. There's a lot of things on YouTube that aren't helpful. But my first class I took was a few years later, probably, from a man in Cleburne, Texas, who primarily makes hammers, Matt Marty. I took a hammer making class from him, and so that started then interesting me in tool making. And so I started working in that, and then maybe a couple years after that class, when I was then primarily doing tool making, it was noticed by another more well-known blacksmith, Brian Brazil. And Brian, he had in the past, back in I think 2012, 2013, had put together a group called the International Young Smiths, and it was a group, just like how it sounds, of young blacksmiths from all around the world. And for a time they traveled around doing demonstrations and classes, and he was kind of the mentor to them, and he taught them. At the time, though, I think this is back in 2017, 2018, he was in Brazil starting a school and teaching there, and he was wanting to put together another International Young Blacksmiths group. And so he had chosen myself, Ethan Hardy in Canada, and then two Smiths from Kentucky, Jonathan Pinkston, Andrew Larson. So those were the folks from North America. And he picked some others from elsewhere in Germany and Australia and Europe. And it ended up not happening. We didn't end up going to Brazil, but we were all then connected at that point and had been talking to each other. So we still wanted to meet, at least the folks from North America. So we ended up meeting at Moccasin Mountain Hammers. It's a shop in Montana. And we hung out there for a week or so, forging, and we all primarily do tool making. So since then we've gotten back together, and while it's not a formal learning setting, we still are able to teach each other just from working with one another. Working though also with other smiths. I have worked with Brian some, Lyle Wynn, Stan Bryant. There's a shop in town actually in Bryan, Steep Hollow Forge, with Alan and Jeff Lee. They've helped a lot of people. And
so there's a really strong community that
is.
Really helped you get going.
There really is, yeah. And that's kind of how all blacksmithing is. If you're getting started, there's plenty of people that
can help you.
Yeah. There's a quote of that, if blacksmith isn't going to tell you how to do something, it's because he's about to show you. And so.
Well, you're going to be busy with me.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting story, and thank you for reciting it for us.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm over here making the rounds of all the tool shops again today. Kind of got a load on. I've got room for one more up there. Although today Don called me a tool hoarder. I don't know why he thinks of that. Well, I've got to get back on the road. Thanks once again.
Yeah, not a problem.
People like your story.
All
I
right.
do too.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.